one of the things that I personally have to tackle on a day to day is if I'm speaking to a friend of mine or a family member, I have to explain why people, especially of our generation, give value to these virtual assets if they're not tangible and they're not something we can hold. And I think this literature, this idea, and it's discussed also in design and analysis of virtual economies by, Ted Castronova. It's a very interesting idea because psychologically speaking, we essentially give the same value of these virtual assets, as you mentioned, to real assets within the world we live in. And so my perspective on the subject is, especially as these virtual economies grow, we're going to be seeing a lot more value being held by these virtual assets in a way we haven't seen before, typically in these other MMOs. So I always think this is an interesting idea and an interesting projection that might happen through NFT technology over the next couple of years.
Yeah. When I first started off in this industry, I always used to say, well, if a real yacht costs $2 million, then a digital yacht should never cost $2 million. But as I, got deeper into the industry, I realized, okay, there's a lot more that goes into these digital assets than just the physical space, right? There's the physicality of the object. I can go into Decentraland or for example Star Atlas. I can go into the showroom and I can wander around and I can look at my beautiful ships and I can fly them around. There's value there, and that's I think the value that people understand who are coming from a traditional space. They're like, oh, okay, I could see you wanting to spend a couple $100 on this game to play around. But you speak of kind of this almost orders of magnitude more value where a layperson might go, well, how can that thing possibly be worth that much? Well, I always refer people to the casino industry, and maybe that's not the best analogy, but you could imagine trying to, if people didn't know what casinos were and you went up to a person on the street and tried to explain it to them and say, hey, go take your $10,000 and go play at the casino, they would look at you like you're crazy. But there's this, phenomenal, people love the chance of being rich, even if that's a tiny probability. And I'm not saying that these markets are I don't want to draw an analogy between the two types of markets, but my point is, what people are willing to spend money on is very, very difficult to quantify. And I think it's naive to try to say, well, this should objectively be cheaper because the physical version in the real world is more expensive. Well, there are other components here, right? You can use that asset in many different ways that you couldn't use the physical asset for. You could loan it out to someone. Well, okay, you can loan a physical asset, but you can, stake it in a program. You can break it into parts and sell it piecemeal. You can do a whole bunch of interesting things, both, from a financial point of view, like I just mentioned, but also potentially in a very, cutthroat kind of competitive scene, maybe like a poker tournament almost, except for it's racing around spaceships.
Yeah, I think that's interesting.